I always feel bad in MLB DFS because a lot of times we'll have pitchers who are good real-world pitchers, but I can't use in DFS because they don't get enough strikeouts. Guys like Kyle Hendricks, guys who are so good at limiting hard contact and just being good pitchers. But because they don't get strikeouts, it's harder for me to use them in daily fantasy. For tonight, we got at least a couple of young pitchers who do a good job of limiting hard contact, but are adding strikeouts to the repertoire, which makes them fun pieces for daily fantasy. And guys, I think we can use for tonight. Let's dive on in and break it on down. Welcome on into the Solo Shop. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sannes. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, here to break down Tuesday night's 11-game main slate, with lock set for 7:05 for this evening. Only one big weather note for tonight. It's not even a big one. It's honestly pretty minor. It's at Fenway Park. The wind is blowing in from left at 12 miles per hour for the Red Sox and the Orioles. Because of the green monster being there, I don't think it matters much if this is happening. So I would not shift batters there at all. So honestly, it's not even a big shift or any shift at all. I would note that games on the East Coast are generally colder than the ones in the Midwest and out West. So make sure you're checking out the temperatures. Go to numberFire's games and lineups page, see the temperature for each game, and adjust appropriately, bumping up hitters in hot weather and bumping them down in cold weather. Our Week 2 NFL DFS Recap Podcast is already posted on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed, and unfortunately, there was a lot to discuss. So Brandon Gadula and I broke down each game and talked through the injury replacements, guys who were trusting, guys who were probably not trusting, and more. And also a couple of guys who we think have salaries that are lower than they should be for week number 3. So make sure you go to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Check that out to get your week 2 fix and get set for week number 3. Also, later today for you season-long players, we're going to have a waiver wire Q&A with myself and JJ Zacharyson. That's on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook pages. Same place where we do the MLB DFS Q&As, and that will follow immediately after. But JJ and I will be live at 3:30 to answer your questions about waivers as we get set for week number 3. So make sure you are subscribed to the FanDuel YouTube page or Periscope, Facebook, and also on Twitch to get those questions in today at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. Another week of the NFL season down means another millionaire made as a result of FanDuel's biggest NFL tournament, the Sunday Million. If you missed out on the first 2 weeks of the season, don't worry. The stage is set for you to play for a big payday in week 3. For just $4.44, again, $4.44, you can enter the week 3 NFL Sunday Million and compete for your share of the $2.75 million prize pool, including a $1 million first place prize. With 13 games in the slate and superstars like Russell Wilson, Zeke Elliott, and Dalvin Cook on the schedule, there is no shortage of big-name fantasy players to build your lineups around. For more details, visit FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app today. Eligibility restrictions apply. And for you NFL Heat Check listeners, our Listener League for Week 3 has been posted. Just go to FanDuel.com/league/Listener League to get yourself entered. There is also a link to that in the Week 2 Recap Podcast. FanDuel.com/league/Listener League to get yourself entered. $5 entry, 3 entries max. There is no rake. So basically playing for free, not free, you know what I mean though. There is no FanDuel does not benefit from this contest. So make sure you check that out. FanDuel.com/league/Listener League. Pitching preview for this Tuesday main slate. Zach Davies is the highest salaried pitcher on FanDuel. He checks in at 10-1, followed by Framber Valdez at 10,000. Brady Singer is $9,600 with Blake Snell at $92. Keegan Aiken and Dustin May are the others at $8,000 or higher. I have not been super quick to buy into Framber Valdez. His numbers last year were not all that great, and the peripherals didn't provide a lot of hope. But this year, the strikeouts are up big time, and he's one of those guys I was talking about. He had the ground balls already in place, but now he's adding strikeouts to the table, and that's a really fun combination when it comes to daily fantasy. I think that makes Valdez the number 1 pitcher of tonight. He is also in a good matchup facing the Mariners up in Seattle. They have a 71 WRC plus against lefties with a 26% strikeout rate. That is the second highest strikeout rate on the slate and the highest for any of the relevant pitchers going for tonight. And Valdez can take advantage of that strikeout rate. We've seen Valdez going away from his sinker, leaning more on his curveball. And the curveball is much more of a whiff pitch for him. So that's a good thing for his strikeout numbers. Not surprisingly, it has helped him big time in that department because Valdez, in his past 6 starts, has a 3.28 skill interactive ERA with a 26% strikeout rate. He has done that while still keeping the ground balls there and still keeping his suppression of hard contact in place. That is an impressive thing to do. Emphasize a pitch that gets more whiffs, but not sacrifice the thing that got you good in the first place. It's tough to have both those things, but Valdez does. That makes him a really fun player for DFS as well as the real world. He's a ground ball pitcher in a good matchup where he can get strikeouts. That's a lot of boxes to check, and he adds in a high pitch count too. So I have no concerns here. The Astros pushing for a playoff spot. They need all they can get, and Valdez capable of providing it. So I am willing to put him number 1 on my list for tonight. $10,000 would have been surprising at the beginning of the year. We've got new data on Valdez, and it says he is worth that. So to me, he is my 1 pitcher for tonight. And there's actually some overlap here between Framber Valdez and Brady Singer. Both these guys, they kill a lot of worms. Singer has a 53% ground ball rate. He did that in the minors too, which is a plus. But now he's adding more strikeouts. So you can see the overlap here. Guys who get ground balls were decent real-world pitchers, and now we're adding strikeouts. So I'm going to buy into Singer just as we bought into Valdez earlier. For Singer, it's not his curveball that he's emphasizing. It's actually his slider, so a different pitch than Valdez, but it's the same thing. He gets swings and misses on that pitch, so you want him to throw it more. And we've seen Singer do that in his past 5 starts, and shockingly, it's working. In those 5 starts, Singer has a 3.67 skill interactive ERA. His strikeout rate is 24%, and he's walking just 5% of the batters he has faced. Similar to Valdez, he has done this while still limiting hard contact. In that 5-start sample, his hard hit rate is 33%. Singer was a first-round pick in 2018. He just turned 24 years old last month. So this is a guy where you do expect him to progress as the year goes along. And I think we're seeing that in the form of Singer throwing his good pitches more often. The individual gains in this span may actually be more impressive than the overall numbers, and the overall numbers are very good. Singer's had 8 strikeouts in back-to-back games. He has allowed only 3 hits total in those 2 games with no earned runs across those starts. And yeah, both those were good matchups. They were against Cleveland and against Detroit. But the Cardinals aren't great either. They have a 94 WRC plus against righties with a 24% strikeout rate. They're not terrible, but they're also not an offense we need to fear. Singer is at home. That's a plus for me. The only concern would be if they pull back on his pitch count because they're not in contention. Singer threw 81 pitches his last time out. They may keep things a bit muted, but when Singer is out there, I will bet he performs well. So Singer is definitely on my list. I would put him a decent amount below Valdez just because Valdez is, I think I feel better about his pitch count for tonight, given that the Astros still need to win games. So it's Valdez, pretty definitively number 1. Singer number 2 at $9,600 for tonight. If you want a lower salary pitcher, I think now might be a good night to take a swing at Drew Smiley. And Smiley's been banged up for this entire year. And honestly, it's much longer than a year for Drew Smiley. It's been like half a decade. So there is a lot of guesswork involved here when it comes to Smiley. But he does have a couple of things working in his favor. The first is that his pitch count should be close to fully expanded now. He went 59 pitches his first outing back, then he went 78 last time. So it's reasonable to think he could go 90 tonight. He might not, because it's possible the Giants just decide to, keep him at 5 innings or so. But the Giants do have an incentive to push him here because they're a half game out of the NL wildcard race. They got motivation that a lot of teams really don't. So that's a plus for Smiley from a pitch count perspective. And plus, Smiley has looked awesome when he's been healthy so far this year. It's only 16 innings, but he has a 39% strikeout rate in those 16 innings. His swinging strike rate is 15.1%, so the strikeout rate will come down, but it's probably going to be pretty good even when that does happen. Last week, Smiley went just 3 2/3 innings, but he still managed to get 8 strikeouts. He had 8 the time before that, too, on just 59 pitches. So he can make people whiff. We know that for sure with Drew Smiley, but he heads in a good matchup tonight to boot. He's facing the Rockies, and the Rockies just put Nolan Arenado on the injured list, which means they've got only one legit right-handed batter left on that roster in Trevor Story. Trevor Story's awesome, but but I'm not sure he can do all this work by himself. The Rockies have a 23% strikeout rate against lefties once you take Arenado out, with a 7% walk rate. So I would not expect them to be a good offense the rest of the year. They weren't a good offense to begin with, but they were better against lefties and righties. Taking Arenado out of the equation does make them more exploitable with lefties as well. This one could suck. Smiley, we don't really know what the pitch count's going to be, so there's always concerns there, and we're working with very small samples, but I have some faith here. And Smiley's not even third for me tonight. I would put Blake Snell third, and we'll discuss him and things to watch, but Smiley's $7,600. He could put up a big number in a hurry tonight, and I'm willing to use him if multi-entering, but I think we do need to put him fourth behind Valdez, Singer, and Snell for this main slate. So Drew Smiley in play, but just be sure to not go too hard at him for this one. Let's take a look at the stacks for today, and with the pitching salaries being more middling, we don't really need to be too muted with our stacks. I think that gives us flexibility to have some fun. So I'm going to target the Braves tonight, facing Jose Urena. Urena is a good pitcher. Like, he is a decent pitcher, but he missed the opening part of the year due to a positive COVID test. He's made 3 starts, and Urena just hasn't really looked right. His velocity is down a bit. It's nothing too concerning, but it is down a bit, and he's still throwing his slider. So it's not like he's hurt, but it just hasn't worked for whatever reason. In the 3 starts he has made, Urena has a 6.03 skill interactive ERA. His ERA is right in line with that at 6.00. His strikeout rate is 15%, and his walk rate is almost exactly as high. So for whatever reason, Urena is just not as effective now as he was last year. This hasn't been some crazy tough slate of teams either. He's faced this same Braves team once. The other 2 games were against Philly and Boston. Those teams are fine, but Atlanta is the best offense he has faced, and now he has to face them a second time. The first time that Urena saw the Braves, his swinging strike rate was just 7.2%, so he could get back to his old ways tonight, and that would mean more ground balls than we really want, but he was never a high strikeout pitcher. It's a tough matchup for him, so even if Urena does bounce back a bit tonight, I still feel good about this specific Braves offense potentially being able to counteract that. I think that means we should go to Atlanta here and feel pretty good about it. And against Urena, we should prioritize the lefties, which there aren't a ton in this Atlanta team, but there are enough. Against Urena last year, lefties had a 14% strikeout rate compared to 20% against righties. The hard hit rate was 45%. So clearly Freddie Freeman is a very good option. There is no shocker in that. This does increase the desire to use Nick Markakis, who has moved down the order. I've been more willing to use him than most this year, mostly because of the value, but I think with this matchup, he does benefit. Ozzy Albies, a switch hitter, who would benefit as well. So I would start the lefties here and then go at the righties after that. I'm not saying you can't use the righties, but I would start with the lefties and then go at the righties, I think is the way to phrase that for this one. I actually think the other side of this game is pretty interesting too. That's the Marlins against Bryce Wilson. This was originally supposed to be Cole Hamels, but Hamels having some shoulder issues still, so the start goes to Wilson. And the Braves have had rotation issues the entire year long, but they still didn't give Wilson a swing in the rotation. Now they have to out of necessity, and their decision-making here should tell us there's probably not a ton of confidence with this Braves the management system of the Braves in Wilson if this is how they play things. And that's understandable too, because Wilson did get some starts last year, 4 total starts, and he had a 5.80 xFIP, 18% strikeout rate, and a 12% walk rate while allowing hard contact 42% of the time. Wilson's only 22, so you should expect him to progress, kind of like we discussed with Singer earlier, but he has struggled in the bullpen when he has gotten chances this year too. Wilson was good in AAA last year, so it's not as if he is a lost cause. And again, he's super young. He's just not someone we need to avoid with hitters right now, and I think it's enough to make the Marlins the number 2 stack of the night right behind the Braves. So both sides of this game, pretty fun to me from an offensive perspective. I would again try to caution you against using Matt Joyce in your Marlins lineups, despite what will look like a favorable salary. He played the full game last night. He finally got to 5 plate appearances for the first time since September 10th, but he also has just an 0.88 isolated slugging percentage for this year, so he hasn't done a lot with those plate appearances. between Corey Dickerson, Starling Marte, Jesus Aguilar, Brian Anderson, and others, you've got enough legitimate hitters here where you can skip over Joyce pretty easily, and I'd be looking to do so. It was a bit tougher last night with Jacob deGrom being the pitcher, but I think we're tonight with Valdez being 10,000. You can make it happen. So I would say, if you can, try to skip over Matt Joyce in your Marlins stacks, but the Marlins are a team I am very okay with overall for tonight. For the third stack, we're going to have to back a team that has terrorized us recently, has terrorized my bankroll, and I would not do this if I didn't think it was necessary. But I think we got to stack the Astros for tonight. Now, I understand if you're turning this podcast off. I don't blame you. We'll talk to you tomorrow. But believe me, I don't want to do it either. They have absolutely shredded me the past few weeks. And the Astros have not scored more than 4 runs in a game since September 12th, which was 10 days ago. At least 10 days ago. So it's pretty grim. And I get it if you don't want to go here. But I will be, because it is a good spot from a process perspective. The matchup, not the team. They're facing LJ Newsome. Newsome is the perfect combination for stacking against. He allows lots of balls in play and lots of hard contact. In his 11 1/3 big league innings, Newsome has a 16% strikeout rate with a 2% walk rate. That means he's allowing a ball in play 82% of the time. That is just a massive number. We're talking like Bartolo Colon type numbers. That's exactly what we want for stacking, because it's not a good thing for Newsome, because he's allowing a 42% hard hit rate with just a 42% ground ball rate. That ground ball rate actually might come down even a bit more. In Double A last year, it was 38%. It was 27% in High A, where he started the year last year. His strikeout rate in Double A was also 19%. So this kind of is just what it seems like he will be, what he's done so far in the majors. He's had some tough results, and that's what we want for stacking. Now, with that said, the Astros have had some peachy spots like this previously. They had one against Jordan Lyles last week, and he kept them in check, but I'm going to go back here once again this time. I just think I have to, with the way that Newsome profiles. It has absolutely nothing to do with the Astros. In fact, I would really like to not stack them, but I think with the way that Newsome himself profiles, it is a situation we should go at in DFS. So unfortunately, we're stacking the Astros tonight, and we shall see how it goes. It does help that some of the salaries here have gotten bumped down. Jose Altuve and Michael Brantley are both $3,000. Altuve has started to come back to life a bit, making more hard contact his past few games, so that's encouraging. Brantley's had good results all year long, so I don't think you need to make too much of a projection for him. So Brantley and Altuve at 3,000. I would love to get George Springer and Kyle Tucker in there. They are getting good results this year despite the team's overall struggles. So Springer and Tucker, I think, are kind of immune to the Astros stink right now, and I'd love to get them. So you might have to be a bit more selective to avoid the guys who have been slumping, but it is worth it to me. So the Astros, despite how much they have destroyed us emotionally recently, I do think need to be on our stacking list for tonight, and I profoundly apologize for when LJ Newsome inevitably throws a no-hitter tonight against the same Astros team. Let's finish up here with things to watch. I did not get to Blake Snell in the pitching section, and that was mostly due to the matchup. He's facing the Mets, who have just a 19% strikeout rate against lefties. They don't make a ton of hard contact, but they do put the ball in play. And also, Snell's pitch count tends to yo-yo a lot, which makes it harder to feel great about him from a cash game perspective. So I really do think that he is a solid number 3 option behind Valdez and Singer. And if you want to put him above Singer, I will not push back on you too hard. I think that's a very justifiable stance, but I think I would put those two guys ahead of Snell for tonight. So to me, it's Valdez, Singer, and Snell. But if you want to flip those second two, I am okay with that. Two other teams I would be okay stacking tonight are the Twins and the Orioles. Kind of the Diamondbacks too, but Lyles has been weird recently and they're bad. So I think the Twins and the Orioles are numbers 4 and 5 for stacking for me tonight. Twins aren't in an obviously great spot. They're facing Tarek Skubal, who can do some things pretty well. He's been getting some strikeouts, but he gives up a ton of fly balls, and it's not an ideal team to face when you give up a ton of fly balls because the Twins are back to full health now. They just got Mitch Garver back over the weekend, so their righties here are pretty interesting to see if their offense can turn the Jets on down the stretch. They're 1.5 games behind the White Sox for the AL Central League, trying to get home field in that first round, the only round where home field matters. So I think the Twins are an intriguing stack for tonight. One I'll probably have a decent amount of just because I have a personal bias towards the Twins, but I think they're good outside of that as well. The Orioles are facing Nick Pivetta. He's pitched just in relief so far this year. Has not been good. 10 earned runs in 5 2/3 innings. Pivetta's not getting a ton of whiffs, and he wasn't exactly a shutdown kind of guy last year either. So I'd say the Orioles work. DJ Stewart's a high-quality one-off play here, but the Orioles are in play for full stacks as well. I just have a harder time getting to 4 guys I want to use there. So that's why the Twins above the Orioles for tonight, despite the fact that the Orioles objectively have a better matchup against Pivetta. That is all the time that we have for today here on the Solo Shot, but back here at 10 a.m. Eastern on the FanDuel YouTube page to get you set for PGA DFS at the Corrales Punta Cana Resort and Club Championship. That is with Brandon Gadula and me. 10 a.m. Eastern on the FanDuel YouTube page. Be posted on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed shortly after that, so make sure you subscribe both to the FanDuel YouTube page and to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Do not forget, we also have the Waiver Wire Q&A later today, 3:30 p.m. Eastern, with myself and JJ Zacharyson. That is at 3:30 on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Periscope. If you have questions for me before that 3:30 p.m. stream, I am on Twitter at JimSannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, for running the video side of things here today. Thank you, Cal, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck with your MLB DFS lineups for tonight. Let's hope the Astros don't crush me once again. And if they don't, we'll see you once again tomorrow. This has been the Solo Shot right here on the FanDuel